Picture this. The year is 1325. Thousands of soldiers are marching to their deaths. Families are being torn apart. Entire cities are at risk of burning to the ground. And the cause of all this chaos and bloodshed, a bucket. No, I'm not joking, an actual wooden bucket. This is the story of the pettiest war in human history. To really understand how we got here, we need to rewind the clock. It's the 14th century, and Italy isn't the unified, boot-shaped country we know and love today. It's a chaotic patchwork of rival city-states, and every single one of them thinks they're the main character. In the middle of this free-for-all, we have two cities in particular, Modena and Bologna. They're neighbors, but they absolutely despise each other. Think of them as the original medieval frenemies, the kind of neighbors who'd borrow your lawnmower and then just keep it. Their rivalry had been simmering for over 200 years, fueled by disputes over land, trade routes, and political power. It was your standard medieval squabbling, but it was about to escalate to a new, completely absurd level. One night in 1325, a small group of Modenese soldiers decided to get a little creative with their rivalry. They snuck into the heart of Bologna under the cover of darkness. Now, what do you think they were after? Were they there to steal gold? To kidnap a nobleman? To burn down the city archives? No. They were there to steal a bucket. A plain, ordinary, wooden water bucket from a city. Well, you might be thinking, okay, but maybe it was a really special bucket, like encrusted with jewels, belonging to the Pope. It was just a regular bucket. But this is medieval Italy we're talking about, where honor and pride were everything. Stealing this bucket wasn't just a prank, it was a profound insult. It was Modena in the most juvenile way possible, saying, we can walk right into your city, take whatever we want, and you can't do a thing about it. Now, a reasonable government might have just written a strongly worded letter, or maybe even laughed it off. But the government of Bologna was not feeling reasonable. They were furious. They demanded the immediate return of their bucket. Modena, enjoying the chaos they'd created, essentially replied, come and get it. And so, Bologna did the only logical thing they could think of. They declared war. Yes, an official declaration of war, over a bucket. To be fair, the bucket itself was just the spark that lit the fuse. These two cities had been itching for a full-blown conflict for decades. The simmering resentment, the political backstabbing, the territorial disputes had all came to a boil. The stolen bucket was just the world's worst excuse to finally settle old scores. But here's where it gets truly wild. They went all in. Bologna, determined to retrieve their bucket and their dignity, mobilized an army of 32,000 men. That is a massive army for the time. Modena, outnumbered but defiant, scraped together a force of 7,000 soldiers. The stage was set for a showdown. On November 15, 1325, the two armies clashed at the Battle of Zappalino, and despite the ridiculous reason for the war, the battle itself was incredibly brutal. This wasn't a joke. It was a bloodbath. Thousands of men fought with swords, spears, and crossbows for hours. Families on both sides lost fathers, sons, and brothers. The fields ran red with blood, all because of stubbornness, pride, and yes, a wooden bucket. Bologna had the overwhelming numerical advantage, but Modena's soldiers were better trained and had superior tactics. They fought with a ferocity that stunned the Bolognese forces. When the dust finally settled and the fighting stopped, the result was a shocking and decisive victory for Modena. They had defeated an army more than 4 times their size. And what did the victorious Modenese soldiers do to celebrate? Did they take over Bologna's land and demand a huge payment in gold? No, they marched to the walls of Bologna, held a mock tournament just outside the gates to taunt their defeated rivals, and then they went home. And you know what they made sure to bring with them? They kept the bucket. Now, here is the absolute best part of this entire story. That bucket, the one that started a war, it still exists. I'm completely serious. You can go to Modena today, visit the city's bell tower, the Torre della Garlandina, and see it for yourself. It sits there, proudly displayed behind glass, a nearly 700-year-old monument to human pettiness. Bologna never got it back. There was no peace treaty that included a clause on bucket repatriation. No formal apology. Modena won the bucket, and they kept the bucket. End of story. The war technically ended, but the rivalry, that carried on for centuries. In fact, the story became so legendary that in 1622, the Italian poet Alessandro Tassoni wrote an entire mock-heroic epic about it called La Secchia Rapita, which translates to the stolen bucket. Think about that for a second. Your city's beef was so ridiculously petty that it became a famous piece of literature. That's a level of spite we can all aspire to. We look back at the War of the Bucket and laugh, and we absolutely should. It's objectively one of the most ridiculous conflicts in history. But it also teaches us a fascinating lesson about human nature. We like to think that wars are fought for grand, noble reasons, for freedom, for justice, for survival. And sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes conflicts start because someone's ego gets bruised, because of pride, because of the simple, stubborn refusal to be the one who backs down. The War of the Bucket was never really about the bucket. It was about centuries of resentment, disrespect, and power struggles just looking for an outlet. Does any of that sound familiar? It should. We see echoes of this behavior all the time, from playground squabbles to international incidents. So the next time you read a headline about a conflict that seems completely irrational and insane, just remember the bucket. Remember that deep down, human beings haven't changed all that much in 700 years. And remember that somewhere in a tower in Modena, there's a simple wooden bucket that stands as proof that it once won a war. Thanks for watching, and hey, guard your buckets. You never know who might want one. If you enjoyed this dive into history's weirdest moments, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you next time.